This happened about 10 years ago. I've been in this subreddit for a while and only just remembered that this happened to me and is a relevant story. So at this time, I'm 14 years old and I'm enrolled in high school. My mom worked at a nearby apartment complex as a manager, so she'd pick me up from school at 2:40 and bring me home instead of riding the bus for hours. The day is completely normal so far. She picks me up from school and brings me home. Not more than 10 minutes after I'm home, a black car pulls up in the driveway and I hear a hard knock on the door. I look through the glass on the front of the door and I can clearly see a man wearing a hoodie in the summer laying on the ground in front of my door. I guess he assumed he was completely obscured because my mom had a wreath on the door, and the space between my window and bottom of the door was wide enough that someone could probably assume I couldn't see them. Well, I saw him. I ran and grabbed the house phone and called the police from the kitchen where I could see the car. I had a machete, teenager that thought swords and stuff were cool, don't judge me, and waited around the corner of the door while still on the phone with the police. At this point, the man knocks again, so I took matters into my own hands. I yell as loud as I can, "Leave now or I'll fucking kill you." I had a pretty deep voice for my age, thank you early puberty, so I guess he thought I was a full-grown man because this man got up and hauled ass like an Olympic sprinter. So about 3 minutes or so pass and the police get to my house. We had no cameras or anything, so there's really nothing to go off of to pursue this person. The cops pretty much just tell me that I handled the situation well and the law's about self-defense. The man never returns, and that's the end of my story. I looked back on this a lot over the years, and this man almost certainly wanted to rob us. What's most creepy about this to me is that he most likely scoped us out, saw that we were just a teenage boy and a single mother, went through the trouble of learning our routines, and waited for what he thought was the ideal moment to rob us. We bought a handgun because of this, so I never really lost any sleep over this because I knew if he came back that I had a surprise for him too. Shitty burglar. Let's not meet. This happened way back, around a decade ago in a third world country. We experienced a really bad typhoon causing the northern part of the country to be submerged in floodwaters for 4 straight days. Hundreds of people died. There was no electricity and phone signal for a few weeks. Everything was ruined. Homes, cars, groceries, restaurants. Needless to say, there was food supply shortages, and you could only imagine what people can do when they go hungry for days. One dark night around 2 a.m. in the morning, we were woken up by the sound of a car engine in front of our house. We all slept in one room in the front part of our house while we were in the process of cleaning post-flood. The engine died, and a male voice called out asking if someone was home. My mother, who was a very gullible person, replied from the front door. The male voice told her, "We are looking for a name. She's been missing for 3 days." My mom said she didn't know that person and to try other houses, but the guy was persistent and replied, "Can we come in to check?" My mom was weirded out, but almost agreed. Take note, it was pitch black outside. We couldn't see the stranger or his car if he had company. Good thing my eldest brother was awake and decided to deal with the situation. He firmly said no and told the stranger not to look for people this way. The guy left. A few weeks later, we received reports of houses in our area being looted by strangers pretending to be looking for missing persons. We figure they were trying to screen houses with vulnerable people. They decided to split the second they heard my brother. It was actually the best time to rob houses. No signal, electricity, no village CCTV. So creepy dudes looking for missing persons at 2 a.m. Let's not meet. A little over a month ago, a friend of mine decided to leave her abusive husband after 20 years. Now, I haven't known this friend for even a year yet. We met at work, but instantly clicked. Plus, when you meet someone who has been through the same kind of things, you don't have to go into detail because they already know. The weekend before she left, they came to my son's birthday party. This was the first time I'd ever met the man, aside from seeing him when he'd come into the store. Some things to know about me. I lived in the middle of nowhere, like it's 30 minutes into town that only has 2 red lights and a Walmart middle of nowhere. I have been through hell with my ex-husband to the point I have a no-contact order where he's not ever allowed to have any kind of information for or about me. Also, my Facebook is set to where unless I specifically give you the link or you knew me 20 plus years ago, you'll never find me. So that Friday I go into town and get cigs and some other things, and my friend tells me she's leaving that day. She's not taking her teenage children because both of them act just like their dad, plus would have told him exactly where she was at. She was also turning her phone off. That literally was the only information I had. I told her to be careful and let me know she's safe when she could, and then went home. About 9:30 that night, I'm at home alone when all of a sudden my doorbell rings. It's her husband. Colin, is my wife here? Me, nope. Colin, do you know where she's at? Me, no, but if I hear anything from her, I'll let her know you're looking for her. Colin, I don't know why you're hiding her or won't tell me the truth. Her boys are distraught that she's gone and killed herself. Me, push my door open. Do you want to come in and search? Because she's not here and I don't know where she's at. But if I hear from her, I'll tell her you're looking for her. He calls me a cunt and walks down the steps. He proceeds to sit out in front of my house for almost 10 minutes. He then pulls around the backside of the area by the lake and sits there for who knows how long because I left to go get a friend to come stay with me for the night after that. A little after midnight, I get a Facebook message from her youngest son asking if I know where she's at. I told him the same thing, that no, I didn't, but if I heard from her, I'd tell her they were looking for her. He says thank you, and that's it. Now, having her husband show up at my house and her kid finding my Facebook set my anxiety on edge, and I didn't sleep much that night. So I was awake at 6 a.m. when her oldest son messages me on Facebook demanding to know where his mom is, telling me I better not lie to him or else. I told him the same thing I'd been saying. He proceeds to tell me his dad filed a missing persons report and the cops were coming for me because I was hiding her. A little after 7, I get a call from a number I don't know. I normally don't answer numbers like that, but hoping it was my friend, I answered. Me, hello? Person. Angel, this is Sophie's sister Michelle. Do you know where my sister is at? Me. No, but if I hear from her, I'll tell her everyone's looking for her. Michelle. When's the last time you saw her? How was she acting? Was she on anything? Me. I saw her at work. She was acting fine, and no, she wasn't on anything. She proceeds to go on about the cops, and the call ends. A little later, Sophie messages me. I call her and fill her in on everything and help her make a 3-way call to law enforcement to talk to them. I'm heading back into town to get gas because I'm leaving for a few days when my phone rings. It's mine and Sophie's former store manager from where we worked. Kate. So I guess you're wondering why everyone's trying to get a hold of you so bad. Me. No, I know. Kate. Well, I gave all of her family your number because I know you know something. Remember that no contact order I mentioned earlier? This thing risked it all over something I had absolutely nothing to do with. Sorry. I hung up because then I started shutting down, went into a full-blown panic attack when I found out shortly after that this thing had listed my number to her Facebook, telling all of Sophie's friends to reach out to me for information. This is already so long, so I'll try to sum this up. What has proceeded over the last 4 weeks is being accused of hiding her, breaking up her family. I was originally a crackhead, then got upgraded to a meth head. I have been harassed, threatened, and sexually threatened. Her husband has stalked my house, broken into my house, and all of this after they were told by law enforcement she did this by choice on her own, and I had nothing to do with it. I have reports with 3 different departments. Her husband was given a criminal trespass. then broke in, and the deputy handling things for my house pushed me to go for a restraining order, which the judge denied because he hasn't done anything to me. I'm currently some hours from home, but I am so tired and mad and terrified. I went through this crap with my own ex. I don't think I can mentally handle going through it again, and I've lost the one safe place I had. My dad's house is no longer safe for me because this man has targeted me. Not even my friend saw this coming from her husband. So, Colin, let's not ever meet again. I've done quite well for myself as an adult, but when I was younger, we were very poor. In middle school, I lived in government housing projects that were like little one-level apartments with 2 apartments sharing a wall each, all spaced apart. There were woods directly behind the cluster of apartments with no gate in between. But no one ever went into the woods, which I learned the reason for due to this incident. These apartments were very poorly made, and the windows could easily be popped in and out, never mind a lock. The front door was somewhat sturdy, but with a good kick it would have easily been opened. My dad was a pretty stocky bodybuilder type, so I had a false sense of security, and would leave my window blinds open at night, as my room faced some trees that would blow in the wind. I loved nature and wasn't afraid of the dark, so I liked watching the trees as I fell asleep. Our apartment's front door was facing this woods, as was my friend's behind ours with our building blocking their view. As you walk in the front door, the hallway is on the left. My room was at the end of the hallway on the right. My big window that took up most of the wall was on the left, and my bed was sideways facing both walls so I could lay on my side and watch the trees. The woods were about a field away, facing our front door, so I couldn't see it from my room. This was just a small area of trees and vegetation. One night I woke up feeling a sense of unease, and through my sleepy haze made out the figure of a large man standing at my window watching me sleep with total confidence, not caring at all if he was seen. He was in a big coat and looked quite burly and average to taller height. It was black in my room and outside, just barely illuminated by moonlight. I had just cracked open my eyes, and I froze once I realized what I was seeing. I kept my eyes closed as possible, just enough to peer at him in the darkness, and literally rolled out of bed to the side, not facing the window, and shouted for my dad, who was across the hall, with both of our doors opened as I crawled out. Not the smartest, but I was a dumb 12-year-old. He hadn't gone to sleep yet, and was in my room in a heartbeat as the guy took off. He went to run out of the door, yelling threats as well, which probably wasn't smart, but the guy was gone. I truly believe he never came in before or after this, just due to my dad's sheer size and build, but I'll never know. A few nights later, I was spending the night at my friend's, who lived directly behind us with the same layout. Her room was the first room on the left, with her window facing the woods and our apartment blocking the view. Her sister's was the second on the left, and her mom and toddler sister were in the room on the right like mine in my own apartment. We finished watching Dave Chappelle and went to do one another's hair in her room, with her older sister helping us while her mom and little sister went to bed. Not long after, we heard screaming from her mom's room and heavy stomping feet. Her older sister swung open the door to the room we were in, and there's just a flash of a huge white man in his 30s to 40s running down the hall towards the living room and front door, and her mom behind him with a butcher knife hacking at the air and screaming bloody murder. The dude flew out the door and towards the woods while her mom locked her door and called the cops. This man had the audacity to pop open the window and crawl into the bed that was pushed against the window just slightly under it, not realizing this woman was a whole Amazon warrior who slept with a butcher knife and would clearly wake up to protect her baby. She was quick and had slashed at him, though I'm not sure of the damage since I was ushered home directly after. The cops went looking in the woods for him and found him and another man quite similar to him living and hiding out there together. They were also responding to a call from a frantic mother whose little girl had been taken that day as well from our housing units, and they found her with those creeps. She had been there all day and night with them, and was around 3 to 4 years old. They were taken to jail, and that's the last I heard of it, as the adults didn't let us in on adult conversation. Poor little girl was probably traumatized, and I hope she's been able to heal. I can't imagine what could have happened if my friend's mom hadn't been so quick and slept with a weapon, or if he had decided to fight instead of run. I still don't understand why he didn't try to overpower her, but it's possible she injured him. After this, my dad explained to me how sometimes drug addicts or homeless people would hang out in these woods. So to the creepy dude who liked to peep and kidnap, let's not ever meet again. My story is not one where I was the target of someone's stalking or harassment, but one where I was the guy who was at the right place at the right time, and I'm fairly certain my inadvertent intervention may have saved someone I'd never met from, well, who knows what. This was back in 2015 or 2016. I'm a career tow truck driver. At this point, I'd been towing cars for most of my adult life, and will likely do so until I either retire or die, whichever comes first. At the time, I was working for a pretty small towing company with only 2 employees, and we rotated who was on call each weekend. It was my weekend on call, and it was summer, so with people being out late and whatnot, I was pretty busy. Cleaning up accidents, towing broken down cars, both in the city and off the highway. I was fine with it, and I was paid commission at the time, so the more calls I did, the more money I made. So it's Saturday night, now Sunday morning, and it's around 2:30 to 3 a.m. And like I said, I've been busy. I'm tired, a little grumpy, and I kind of want to go home when my phone rings. It's an insurance company calling, asking if we can do a tow for one of their customers who has broken down on the side of the highway. The breakdown location they give me is about 15 miles out of town, which I normally wouldn't do, but the tow destination happens to be a dealership that's just a couple minutes from my apartment. I contemplate rejecting the call, but because I'm paid commission, I figure screw it, I can run up and grab this car, drop it off around the corner from my place, then hopefully I can head home and get a couple hours of shut-eye. So I take the call and hop on the highway. The insurance company provided me with the customer's first name, which we'll say was Kara, and gave me a phone number for her. Usually, I try to make contact with the people who are on the side of the highway to let them know I'm on my way and give them an ETA. I try calling her a couple of times, but she doesn't answer. Not unusual. After a short while, I see hazard lights up the way on the shoulder, so I turn on my strobes and start slowing down. As I approach, I notice that not only is there the late model car that I'm looking for, but there's another car on the scene as well that doesn't have its hazards on, but it's parked in front of the car I'm meant to tow. This is annoying, but not uncommon, as I need to be able to get in front of the disabled car in order to load it, and sometimes people don't realize that. But because the other car is there, I instead pull up behind both cars. You do this so that as the tow driver, you're the one that has to make the weird maneuver of pulling off the shoulder and back onto the shoulder, and that the other cars just have to drive straight forward on the shoulder. Otherwise, if I pulled up in front, then the other car would have to go around me, and it's unprofessional and unsafe to make them do that. Standing at the trunk of the late model car, which is now directly in front of me, are a man and a woman. The woman is probably in her early 20s, and dressed to the nines for a night out. She's about 5'1" or 5'2". She's wearing tight leatherish or something pants, a halter top, long black hair, very pretty. The man is probably around 5'10" and skinny, maybe 150 to 160 pounds, wearing a dark hoodie and dirty jeans. They're standing very close, facing each other. She has her arms crossed, and he's leaning down, talking to her. I step out of my truck and approach them both, introduce myself. They separate a few feet, and I look to the woman and say, "Are you Kara?" She nods. I say I'm here from her insurance company, and I ask what's going on with the car. Immediately, the man pipes up and says, "Yeah, it's just having some fuel issues. It's an easy fix. Can you just drop it off at this commuter parking lot? I'm going to fix it for her there." I'm rather annoyed at this because the commuter lot in question is further up the highway, and I'm already 15 miles out of town. Like I said before, I only took this call because it was supposed to be coming back toward my apartment, and I really wanted to go home. Not only that, but in order to change the original tow destination, I would have to call the insurance company back, wait on hold for who knows how long for a representative, and then let them know of the change and try to get them to pay me for extra for deadhead miles home after unloading, and I really don't want to do any of this. And thirdly, this is a late model car. I'm no mechanic, but it's new enough that whatever is wrong with it is likely covered under warranty, so the dealership is really the best place for it to go anyways. I explain all this to the guy, but he's not really having it. He gets stern with me, says something like, "Look, man, you just need to take the car where I tell you to take it." We go back and forth on this for maybe 60 seconds, and he's just getting madder. "Well, you know what, man? You're not the named insured. Kara is. The easy way to settle this is to ask what she wants me to do with the car, and whatever she says is what I'll do. Fingers crossed she'll want to take it to the dealership so I can get home sooner." I turn to look at Kara to ask her that question, and I don't see her right away. She's no longer standing where she was just a minute ago, which was slightly off to my right. I continue to not see her until I've turned almost all the way around because she's standing directly behind me, and by directly, I mean within an inch of my back, arms still crossed. I look down at her and she locks eyes with me. Her eyes are wide as plates, almost owl-like, and immediately it feels like she's staring into my soul. She didn't say a word, and she didn't have to. I took a step back and did what felt like a double take. I looked at him, then at her, then at him again, and then back at her, and it slowly started to dawn on me that maybe something isn't right. I asked her, "Do you know this guy?" And she ever so slightly shook her head no. The expression on her face when I asked her that will be forever burned in my skull. I turned to the guy and was like, "Oh, you gotta go, man." Now, I'm not a tough guy. I'm a total beta male, if there is such a thing, and I don't care who knows it. I have nothing to prove. I'm super averse to confrontation and will run at the first sign of trouble, and I'm not exactly the biggest of guys either. I am, however, what I like to call sturdy. I'm 5'8" and 240 pounds. I have a bit of a gut, but I also have big thighs and broad shoulders. And people are generally surprised to find out that I weigh as much as I do, and I think that might have been my saving grace for what happened next. Without a word, the guy starts to move for Kara, and I move to stay in between them. He tries to push me out of his way by shoving me in the chest, but because I believe he underestimated my weight, only pushed me hard enough to make me take a single step back. Immediately I took that step forward towards him and body-checked him hard as I could, hard enough to completely knock him over, basically onto his ass. Because we rotated during the back and forth push bit, Kara is now in front of me to my right, somewhat between me and the guy who's trying to scramble to his feet. I reached out and snatched the poor girl up by her waist, spun her towards my truck, and yelled for her to get into the driver's side, and she does so. I turn back to the guy who's standing up again at this point, and he's breathing hard. He gets right up in my face but doesn't do anything, just breathes at me. I stare him right in his face, and mustering up the best dad voice I can muster, just say, "You need to go."
I'm shaking now, and I'm absolutely terrified. I don't know if he has a weapon. I don't know if he's going to try to fight me, and I don't know what I would do if he did. Like I said, I'm not a tough guy. I don't know how to fight. I've never been in a fight in my life. What if I get badly hurt? What if I get stabbed? What do I even do now? I just want to go home, for fuck's sake. I wasn't even going to take this damn call. All this running through my head at lightning speed. After probably around 15 seconds or so, which felt like eons, he kind of huffs a bit. Smiles, one of the creepiest smiles I've ever seen, and starts to back off. Sucking his teeth and rubbing his hands together, he slowly walks backwards a few steps, then makes his way to the front of the car, gets in, and drives off. I stayed motionless, watching him until I could no longer see his taillights. I got Kara's car loaded up on the tow truck, and as we made our way to the dealership, she told me through tears that her car had shut off while she was driving, and she pulled onto the shoulder and called her parents because she was on their insurance. Her parents made the call to the insurance company, who eventually dispatched me to her location. While she was waiting, a bit after she made the call, the guy pulled up in front of her and walked up to her passenger window to try to talk to her, asking if she needed help, etc., and she told him she was fine, that a tow truck was coming, and she didn't need help. He persisted, and she tried to tell him off, and eventually tried to roll up the window. Apparently he stuck his arm in the window and got the door unlocked and opened the door. In fear, she jumped out of the car, leaving her phone inside, and ran to the back of her car and stayed put there because it was in the line of sight of traffic. Apparently he was pretty lewd with her, and whenever she tried to go back to the car, he would prevent her from getting in. Several minutes later, I showed up. Who knows what would have happened had the timing been any different. Her parents were waiting at the dealership when we arrived, and she told them what had just happened. Her parents gave me a $20 tip, which was all the cash they had on them at the time, and Kara gave me a very tight and clearly heartfelt hug before I left. I never saw her again. I tell you what, every guy has daydreamed at some point of coming to the rescue of a pretty girl in trouble, myself included. You think you're going to be a hero, that you're going to be the cat's ass, you're going to slay the dragon and get the girl and ride off into the sunset like the king you are. But for me, being in that situation, in the moment, was one of the most terrible feelings I've ever had in my life. Forced into a confrontation I didn't want nor was prepared for, not knowing what to expect from a clearly not well-hinged individual. I didn't feel like the cat's ass, and I didn't feel like a hero. I felt like a scared little kid encountering a bully on the playground for the first time. If I'm ever in a situation like that, I will never not intervene. I just really hope I don't have to. I was a 17-year-old college student in France when all of this happened. I was living in an apartment next to my college campus with two roommates. Let's call them Alex and Polly to preserve their anonymity. I was coming back from class around 5:30 when I saw a guy waiting in front of our building. It was the kind of old building where you can enter without ringing. It was a big residence, so I just passed by him without really caring about why he was there. 15 minutes later, the guy came up to my apartment. He pretended that he was one of Alex's friends, that he was waiting outside for him, but Alex was late. He also told me the exact place where Alex was doing an internship at the time and even told me about his schedule for the day. With all the information he gave, I was confident that they knew each other, so I just let him in. For the record, Alex's father used to work for a big company at the time, so even by looking up on the internet, it was impossible to find anything about him. As a good host, I offered him something to drink and started talking with him while waiting for Alex. The conversation quickly turned darker when he started telling me about his suicidal past and about the amount of guns he was keeping in his home. In France, it is really unusual to have a gun at home, except if you are a hunter or in a profession that requires one. It was getting late, and as the conversation got darker, I started to feel uncomfortable with him, so I decided to send a text to Alex just to let him know that his friend was here and that I wasn't feeling really comfortable with him. Alex answered me a few minutes later, asking me to send him a picture of his friend just to see who was here, so I took my phone and discreetly took a picture of the person in front of me. After receiving it, Alex just told me that he was on his way home. When Alex arrived, I was relieved. He came in the living room and said hello to his friend, but then he just sat down and an awkward silence came along with it. After about a minute, I received a text from Alex telling me, "I don't know this guy." At that moment, I thought he was joking around, but after seeing his face, I knew he was serious. So here we are, two young college students, stuck with a stranger that apparently knows a lot about Alex without even meeting him. We were both really young at the time, and we didn't really react in a good way. Every human being in this kind of situation would have called the police or asked him to leave, but we were really lost and didn't think about it. We were scared of his reaction if we would have asked him to leave, so we thought, hey, let's eat early so he will feel uncomfortable not being invited for dinner and leave. But as we were dining in the kitchen, he just stayed in the living room and started to watch TV without even asking us. At the same time, our third roommate, Polly, just came home from work. She entered the apartment and said hi to the guy in the living room before joining us in the kitchen. She then asked us who he was and was not really happy when we told her we didn't have any idea of who he was or how to make him leave. We explained to her our dumb strategy of just living our life until he feels uncomfortable and leaves, and she started to act with us and just tell us about her day. At that moment, Polly was going through a rough period and was telling us about it. Not really a fun story to tell or to listen, but while she was telling us about her misery, the guy in the living room joined us in the kitchen and started laughing about Polly's story before going back to watch TV. It was really creepy. At this moment, Alex had enough and asked us to leave the apartment while he was going to deal with the guy. This is what happened when we left. Alex got back to the living room and started to act like he was about to go to bed. Another dumb strategy, yes, I know. His room was open to the living room, so he told the guy he was about to go to bed. He left the door half open while starting to remove his jewelry. He noticed that the guy in the couch wasn't moving or caring about the fact that there was no one left in the apartment except Alex, who was in his room. Alex went up to him and told him that maybe it was time for him to leave and he was his friend and that he was going to sleep, but the guy replied to him, "I'm waiting for the girls." Alex got mad and finally put him out of the apartment. At the same time, Polly and I were going back in the building and met the guy on the stairs. He wished us a good night with a creepy smile and left. Going back to the apartment, Alex told us what happened, and we started to ask ourselves, who was that guy? How did he know Alex's name and surname? How did he know where he was working and his schedule? How did he find our address? We spent part of the night trying to find answers without any success. We learned from our mistakes and decided to never open the door again to someone we didn't know. 2 weeks later, Polly was chilling in her room. She was home alone. Her window was having a view on the parking lot, and she was looking through it and saw a red car parking. The guy was back. Polly got the good idea to note his license plate and to verify that the door was locked. The guy came up to the apartment and told Polly the exact same thing that he had told me the first time he came. Polly got mad and told him that if he was still here in 5 minutes, she would call the police. It was the last time he came. A few weeks later, Alex came home from work telling us he finally remembered where he had met the guy, so here's the story. Alex used to go into a bar where you're able to play video games while drinking. Apparently, the guy was in the same bar at the machine next to him and tried to talk to Alex, but he was focusing on his game and only took the time to tell him a quick hello.
We think that the guy probably followed Alex around for a week or two after that day. We moved out of the apartment a few months after this story. Anyway, I would have loved to have not met this one. So I'm currently a sophomore in college, and the bar scene here is pretty big. Going out for the night to get special deals on alcohol so you can get plastered with your friends is kind of the go-to here. Despite this, I'm not a huge drinker and don't enjoy it a lot because it tastes so bad and hurts my stomach. I do enjoy the company, though, and often go just to be out with my friends or meet new people. A lot of times I'm called the dad of the group because I end up taking care of them all the time. That's the prelude to what happened when I decided to go with them one Friday night. So we got all dressed up, pre-gaming a bit at my friend Q's apartment before we Ubered downtown to one of our pretty well-known college bars/clubs. After we got in, my friends immediately split off into tiny groups, combing over the club for girls they wanted to try their shot at spending the night with. This is going to make me sound weird, but one-night stands aren't really my thing, and I don't want to end up cock-blocking my friends, so instead of looking for girls, I usually find someone at the bar and make friends with them. I was chatting with some dude that was wearing a cowboy hat when eventually a girl approached me. She was pretty cute, probably 5'6", with dirty blonde hair and eyes that I think were light brown, but they were so light they almost looked gold, which threw me off a bit. She asked if she could buy me some drinks in exchange for being her friend for the night, and I of course accepted, because hey, that's what I came here for anyway, right? Anyways, she kept her word, and we started talking to each other, and she introduced herself as Alexia, but to call her Alex. I asked her some basic stuff about if she came with friends, if she went to college here, etc., to which all the answers were no. That struck me as pretty odd, as it's honestly pretty unsafe to be in the downtown area alone as a girl at like 1 a.m. in the morning. She said she wanted to hear about me, though, and actually seemed pretty excited to listen. It felt like a really nice change of pace, because I'm usually the one learning about other people, not the other way around. It also could have been the alcohol starting to take effect, since I'm actually a pretty big lightweight, as I said, and I don't actually binge drink often. The whole time I was talking, she stared into my eyes and had this warm smile that made me feel so acknowledged, if that even makes sense. I felt like she was enjoying her time as much as I was, and that just made me even happier because I thought it meant I made a new friend. That was when her demeanor began to change, though. She started to get kind of flirty and eventually asked if I wanted to go home with her. Like I said, I'm not really a one-night stand guy, and I explained I like to get to know people a little better before sleeping together. I'm pretty sure I saw what I think was anger flash across her face, but it was quickly replaced with another smile, and she suggested just going home and watching a movie instead. I agreed and pulled out my phone to begin ordering an Uber, but she basically grabbed my wrist and started guiding me outside. I was confused, trying to ask if she was planning to drive after drinking, but she wouldn't really answer me. We eventually got outside the club, and she pointed to a black Honda Civic parked right at the front of the club. That was when all the warning bells began, like a tornado had passed through them. I was pretty drunk at this point in the night, maybe 6 or 7 drinks deep, but I was still aware enough to see the red flags. She said she had came alone, but the lane the car was parked in was only for pickups, and I never saw her order an Uber. Somebody would have to be driving the car. This was enough to make me uncomfortable, and I asked again if she was planning to drive the car. She said yes, as she continued walking me closer to it. I knew that was a bold-faced lie, and as we got closer, my heart sank as I noticed the outline of 3 other guys in the car. At that point, my adrenaline kicked in, and I yanked my hand away from her and said, "There's no way in hell I'm getting in that car with her." She tried begging me one more time, saying she really wanted to have sex and would let me do whatever I wanted, but I already had turned around to walk back to the club. She started cussing me out, practically screaming at the top of her lungs as I walked back up to the bouncers to go in. I texted my friends what happened, and we all met back up and went back home. It was obvious she was going to college bars trying to get guys drunk before offering to sleep with them, so she could get them in that car with 3 other men to rob them or do God knows what else. I called my city's anonymous tip line and left a detailed description of the girl, car, and place where it happened. That night was a real wake-up call for me, and I'm so thankful that despite being drunk that night, I was able to piece together what was happening before it was too late. Please remember to always be safe when going out with friends, especially when it's late at night or if alcohol is involved. But to Alexia, who I saw that night at the bar, let's not meet.